Hello and welcome to YHP and Shine Media Presents. I'm Joanna Obey and today I'm talking to Tre Azam from MyndPlay. Welcome, Tre.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for giving us your time.
My pleasure.
From the sounds of things, you're very, very busy, so we're very lucky.
I am very busy. And
Yes.
you're a little bit lucky.
Yeah, I am a little bit lucky. Now, explain MyndPlay.
In the purest form, MyndPlay started off as a mind-controlled video platform. So the very basic premise was, can you make people have fun while they're training their brain? And the answer was yes, if you can make them realize they're not training their brain. So
Okay.
we built a platform that allows people to effectively control movies, videos, games, and hardware devices with their mind, using their mental calm and mental focus, but at the same time, almost through the back door, also making them secretly Jedi.
How? And where would that idea come from?
The idea actually had really humble beginnings, because I don't know if you know, I'm also a trauma therapist by trade. And I really enjoyed being a therapist, which I did for about 1.5 years. Only problem is I'm still an entrepreneur at heart. So as much as I liked helping people, I got a little bit sick of listening to them moaning all the time. It was bringing me down. So I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if you could continue to help, people, and you could continue to treat people, but one, without having to see them, and two, without having to charge them so much, because if it's your time, you know, you've got to charge at the end of the day. So, and plus there's a whole kind of mental health industry that I didn't like, because what was happening was, the point of mental health was to keep people coming back to you. And I didn't think that was the point of it. The point of someone coming to you for help is you help them and then they go away. But the industry wasn't like that. So I thought, if I can somehow combine neurofeedback with a way to deliver the therapy, i.e. video, so that in the purest essence, the video changes based on what's going on inside the brain. So imagine a video with 5 different therapy techniques and a soldier out somewhere who's suffering from trauma. He can watch the video, the brainwave technology learns which therapy technique is having the greatest impact on his mind, and then it customizes the rest of the video to treat him almost like a virtual therapist. So that's how the concept started, and it started off being called Mind Guru, because it was all about revolutionizing mental health. But very quickly I found that no one gives a crap about mental health, and there's no money in it, and it's a real shame, because everybody talks about there being very serious mental health issues in the country, people, children, but when it comes down to putting money towards it, the budgets are rubbish, and they expect you to do it all out of the goodness of your heart. But that's not how innovation works. You can't develop if you've got no money. So what we did is we thought, well, one of the other things is the real change comes in a person when you can help them develop consciousness, and consciousness comes really easily. That's from just making them aware of how their emotions affect their outcomes. So I thought, if I could change it so that it's not always therapy, but it's games. So you're playing golf, you're chasing thieves, you're dodging bullets with your mind. But what you're doing is you're giving an incentive to play with the mind. And then that's how MyndPlay began. It was almost like, well, let's take brain training and make it fun. And although everyone else in the industry is talking about gaming and 3D games and PlayStations with mind controlled, I didn't see it like that. For me, that's not what the technology is about. If you're going to make the brain better, if you're going to make the man, the person, the woman better, you have to train them in emotional intelligence. And when you're watching a film and you see somebody get throttled, you react, right? You don't like it. Whereas if you're watching Tom and Jerry and he gets hit over the head with a saucepan, you don't really react. So if you really want to have emotional intelligence, you have to have the stimulus, which is real. That's why we patented video as kind of the core technology. The other benefit with video is that it meant we can create apps in a couple of days. You know, anyone who's done video production, you've got a YouTube generation now who are exceptional little video editors. So if we can create a platform that allows you to make games out of your phone or your camera, it means we can also utilize the talents that exist in the market. There's a whole generation out there who can now also create mind-controlled interactive games, and that's what it was about. It was about empowering people from mind and also empowering people to create their own content and sell it online.
Now, where did the passion for technology come from?
It's not. I don't have I think I've got a passion for doing something different. It's funny because a lot of people, they have an idea and then they roll with it and that becomes their thing. With me, it doesn't work like that. With me, I have about 100 ideas a day. The hard part is working through the feasibility of what's going to work and what's not going to work. With this one, what I really liked was it ticked all my boxes. When I came up with the Mind Guru concept, I actually started off with a criteria. I said, whatever I do has to be innovative, so no one's done it before. It has to be imaginative, and it has to be something that completely revolutionizes or completely disrupts an industry. That was my thing. That I want this to be something completely different, and of course it has to make me a little bit of money on the side.
On the side.
So I instead of doing what other people do, which is come up with an idea and then try and work out the feasibility, I had a checklist. So as I was coming up with ideas on a daily basis, as you do when you're sitting in a traffic jam, and this is when I came up with MyndPlay, by the way, sitting in a traffic jam coming back from Bradford. Go to Bradford, if anything, it gives you really good ideas. You get so bored, your brain is like, just give me something to think about. But the other good thing is...
Is that a tip for the entrepreneurs?
Yeah, go to Bradford. Literally, I sat there and I just thought to myself, instead of trying to come up with lots and lots of ideas, why don't all the ideas that come, I just find a way to very quickly assess them? And then when the whole Mind Guru idea came, immediately I liked it. And instead of doing what other people do, where you get really excited and you start thinking of all the things you can do, I, with my nature coming, and I was brought up in business, so for me it was very quickly, all right, how quickly can I break this apart? So it's not about building it up and making myself look clever. It was like, well, actually the idea is probably crap, and let's figure out why it's crap. And I sat there for the next 6 hours in that traffic jam, thinking of every possible, because I worked as a business consultant, and I used to love cussing other people's businesses, right? Because it's how you get them to understand this rubbish. So I thought, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to cuss my business to the ground. And I did, and I really gave myself a hard time. But the good thing was, by the time I got home, I had answered the majority of the most difficult questions, and then I made that a mantra in MyndPlay, which is, I'm not going to second guess what the customer wants, and if anyone cusses me, I'm going to open my ears. When I get compliments, it doesn't mean nothing really. It's just satisfies your ego. But when you get criticism, you've normally got someone either who's got something to prove, or somebody who's had a bad experience. But the good thing about criticism is that sometimes you get gems. There was this one guy who went to one of our competitors, and on the forums he slated them. So they blanked him, they ignored him. I sent him an email, said, do you mind cussing my company? Yeah, he sent me a whole bunch of emails telling me what was wrong with my system. I just kept saying thank you, and I kept sending them on to my developers. Change this, change this, change this. And then about 3 months later I sent him another update and said, right, okay, everything that you wanted is done. And he sent an email back saying, yeah, but you haven't paid me for my consultancy. I said, well, you never said you were going to charge. So I basically
Thanks for that, though.
Yeah, I did. I said, thanks for that. For that, you get a free piece of software worth $79.99. But the point is, I took the criticism, and since then, it's actually what's made us do really well. The only reason we're working with UCLA is because he insulted my system at the Topanga Film Festival, and I said, look, if you're going to cuss me, but at least try it first.
Yeah.
And he said, look, if you come to my office, I'm warning you, we're going to bust your balls. It's an American thing. They didn't actually do anything.
Okay, yeah. And there wasn't a physical
operation
that took place.
Busting. It was just metaphorical. But the point was, I went there, and they really did for 2 hours. And from all of that, all the various different meetings that I've had and all the slatings that we've taken, we have improved our system to become the most efficient. And we now have probably the best and simplest, most effective, most visually, aesthetically pleasing platform that's out there, and only because we've listened to the market. So I think people shouldn't think they know everything, even if they do, because there's a good chance that what you know could be refined somewhat.
I think that's a very good tip to give, but MyndPlay is almost where you are now, but there's so much more going on with you. Talk us through some of the other businesses that you've got.
Well, MyndPlay is my core business because it branches out into so many different areas. With the MyndPlay, we do the platform, we do the training, so I get to work with a lot of athletes. We get to do customer experiences and research, but at the same time, I run my company Tre Azam, which is a documentary company. To be honest, that's not a business for me necessarily. That's more of if something bothers me and I choose I want to make a film about it, I make a film about it. So every time we've made a documentary, we've made it because we wanted to make it. We've then gone on and sold it or had someone commission it midway through. It's the great thing about business is you start off with one vision and you have to be able to adapt, and sometimes the vision grows, it flexible, it becomes different. And now MyndPlay has grown to such a stage that we're no longer an app developer, we are a manufacturer, we are a research house, we are a service provider, we are a consultant to the industry, we're also part Jedis. So
you like this Jedi theme?
Well, that's actually, you know what it is?
Keeps coming up in all your answers.
The Jedi thing was what it was about, because if you look at it, we've got a generation of young people, we've got generations of people out there who start crying if somebody insults their hair or commit suicide if they fail their exams. And you've got things where, kids who can't cope with bullying. I grew up in Hackney. If you couldn't deal with bullying, you got your ass kicked on a daily basis until you became stronger or died. So the thing is, for me, it was about, the problem at the moment is that there is a serious lack of Jedi ability in kids, and that's because they're emotionally weak. We teach them physical skills, we teach them sports skills, we even tell them how to think. We don't teach people how to feel. If you can teach people emotional intelligence, then they become much more powerful. And that's really the bigger picture of MyndPlay. You know, I can make money in a number of different ways. I choose to make it through this because it satisfies my urge to kind of do something different, but also help.
Do you think being an entrepreneur is something you can teach? Or do you think you're born with that fighting
That's
instinct?
interesting because it depends if you're going to distinguish between an entrepreneur and a businessman. So anyone can be a businessman, anyone can be a business person. As for an entrepreneur, I think anyone can try to be an entrepreneur. Not everyone can succeed at it. Because I think above and beyond anything else, it comes down to perseverance. Because that's the hardest part about being an entrepreneur, is trusting in your ideas, persevering with your idea, persevering with criticism, persevering with a lack of resource, being the guy that has to do everything from have the CEO meetings to clean the toilets when you first start. That's the hardest part.
Well, you say that, perseverance and really believing in what you're doing. So how do you create a brand and one that's trusted? Because you've been successful in also selling business, right?
Believing in what you're doing, there's a thing about this now, because a lot of people, they have false belief. Like, you know, I remember I was at an entrepreneur startup event, and someone stood up and said, everyone can be an entrepreneur. I went up after him and said, he's lying. It's not, it doesn't work like that. It's not about just persevering. That's actually what I mean. See, a lot of the times, the only time you have to have belief in yourself and you have to have belief in your ideas. But sometimes people have a false belief. That's where arrogance comes in. And I think that's really important as well. If you have a right to believe in yourself, provided you also take the right to cross-reference yourself, question yourself, be self-deprecating. Because otherwise what happens is you can end up chasing, you know, you see on Dragons Den every other week, where the Dragons will say, how much money have you put in? Please, please, stop putting money in, go home, go get a job. And that's because there are sometimes you can end up believing so much in something that you haven't actually truly validated, that you end up chasing smoke.
How do you get yourself into a position where you make your brand, your business, or whatever you're working on, attractive enough that someone wants to buy it?
Brand is really important, right? What you said there is, how do you make a brand? The way you make a brand is by doing what the big companies do. What smaller people do is they say, oh, these things aren't important, brand's not important. They try and build the product. The brand is the most important thing, and branding is actually about messaging and consistency. That's it, right? It doesn't matter how rubbish your logo looks. If it's consistent and it has a solid message behind it, and that message is consistently validated through your behavior, you have a brand. Work your arse off for the people you work with. Go the extra 3 miles. That's how you build a brand. You don't build a brand by having a fancy logo and putting it everywhere. You have a brand by starting with an identity, and then within the minds of your customers, making that identity mean something. When people look at MyndPlay, they need to think innovation, they need to think science, they need to think these are the guys that can do. When they look at a bank, you need to think trust, you need to think reliability. If you look at a bank logo and it's the same as a florist logo, how is that going to impact in your mind? And then you go in there and then they're flowery on top of it, and you're like, no, this ain't right. Because you start with a kind of an understanding or a preconception, and then the behavior of that brand either strengthens it or dictates how you then interpret the initial feelings you had about it. So to build a brand, you have to work very hard. You have to go the extra mile, and you have to understand what values you want your brand to represent. Because no brand can do everything. You have to understand what values you're going to represent, and then figure out what behavior from me and my staff will reflect that. If I say I'm a customer service person, my brand is about great customer service, and every time you call, I'm like, go away. I don't want to help you, and I take 3 weeks to send the package out. It doesn't work. People are going to say they're liars. Not only are they not good at customer service, they're liars. Then they're going to become a fraudster, and then it doesn't matter if you spent £10 million building your brand. It ain't going to mean nothing if the perception doesn't match the perception you're wishing to go for, if the reality doesn't match the perception you have created. Okay,
so you said brand, and that brings us nicely onto your time on The Apprentice, because I guess that was...
How does it do that?
Because
don't try sly ones.
No. It brings us nicely on... It brings us on nicely because you obviously went on that show, and that was the first time you publicly got to show you.
No,
well, you were official.
Was my chance to prove to the world that I am actually not a bad person, and I've got really no temper, and that I don't like to swear. And
I don't know that quite worked. Why did you choose to do that? Because you clearly have the business acumen, and you know.
I did The Apprentice because
do it yourself.
A friend of mine, I never watched it. I didn't know what The Apprentice was. I did not know the show, and somebody called me up and said, "Have you heard of this Saeed guy?" who was on the year before mine. I was like, no. And then a friend of mine, she just said, look, I think you'd be really good. You should give it a go because you're always going on about business. So it's really weird because it's almost like it was just meant to be, because that night, because I used to look, I was a consultant then, so I used to look for contracts on Total Jobs and Monster. And on Monster I saw the application form for the Apprentice. I filled it in, but only for a laugh. Like, I did really stupid things. Like, I said, what 3 kind of people bother you? And I said, fat, stupid and ugly. I didn't mean it.
Yeah.
Ugly people don't bother me that much.
The other two do?
But I really did take it as a laugh, and then I got called in for an interview, which I turned up late for, made out all this. It was really bizarre, because it was like, I was taking the mick at every step. You know, they called us in at 9 a.m, I got there at 12 and said, I've been waiting 3 hours already. I just walked in. They saw me walk in. But they're like, oh, well, let us pass you through. And there was 30 people interviewing, and you get interviewed by 4 people. The 4 people I got interviewed by ended up being the series producer, the series director, the executive director, and the head of casting. So out of all the idiots, I ended up making the 4 decision makers.
Yeah.
And then I forgot all about it, and to be honest, I didn't even think about going on it again until we went to the second round of interviews where you go on a head-to-head. It's the first time you see how you're going to compete against other people. And I love competition. I love that day. And after that day, I was like, I want to do this. And then they called me up and said, you're on standby. I said, no. Either you put me in or you don't. I'm not going to go on standby. I'm not going to be like your little bitch on the side. And they said, all right, fine, you're in. And that was it. Honestly, that was it. It was that simple. I didn't aim to go in. I didn't try to be anything. I went in. I spoke my mind. And it did well. And I did well.
Are you still in touch with Sir Alan? Or any of those that were on the show, The Apprentice?
Some of the candidates, yeah. I'm still very good friends with Guzzle.
Really?
Yeah, she became my adopted sister after the show.
Brilliant.
And Simon, I still see him. He's like the annoying little brother. And that's it. I mean, I still speak to the odd guys here and there, but really Simon and Guzzle are the only 2 I'm properly in contact with. Alan Sugar, he lives around the corner from me. He lives about half a mile away from me. And my office was in the same building as his. He recently moved. So I used to see him every morning.
Did he say hello?
No.
No way!
No, I didn't say hello either to you, if I'm completely honest.
Why?
I don't really like him that much.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't really like him on the show either.
Why?
Alright, I respect business people and I respect what he's achieved. So you can never take away from a person. And at the same time, I'm not going to insult the man because I don't believe in doing that. But what I didn't like is that his criticism would change. See, I believe in business principles. And when you watch The Apprentice, and I know that's obviously big parts of it are scripted, but his business principles change depending on the situation. And one minute he'll say, oh, you shouldn't be focusing on the big deal, you should be focusing on the little ones, if the little guy's won. And then if the other guy's won, he'll be like, oh, you need to focus on the big one. And to me, I don't respect that kind of criticism. I don't respect that kind of feedback. Obviously, I respect what he's achieved, but I didn't think of him as a particularly nice person, and I don't think he tries to be. So it's not like he's out there trying to be a good guy, and I'm saying he's not a
Yeah, absolutely.
He's just, I didn't find him to be a very nice person. And actually, when I set MyndPlay up, and I'd just done some work with Nick Faldo and the PGA, I sent him an email saying, would you like to see it? Because we were around the corner, and he sent an email back saying, I don't think it works. So I assumed that's how he sounded.
When he wrote it.
I don't think it works. I saw it 30 years ago, and it didn't work then, and it doesn't work now. And I just wrote back to him saying, okay. That was it. I think I might have written a few other things, but I don't remember what they were.
Do you think they were pleasant? Hopefully.
Everything I write is pleasant.
Good.
It's not necessarily for him.
Okay.
No, I'm joking. I wouldn't do that. I didn't insult him or anything. I just thought, okay, it's fine. But no, he's done really well for himself. I just don't like him that much as a person.
So would you do that show now?
Would I do the Apprentice?
And do you think it's got better?
Not in the same context. No, of course it hasn't got better, because the business has become more and more compromised. It's become more of a personality show, and you can see that from the last set. I mean, I really enjoyed doing it. I wouldn't do it again. But I don't think it's getting better. No, I think it's entertaining to watch. Of course it is. But then Big Brother's entertaining to watch as well.
You said that you had you grew up in a household where your father and your grandfather were businessmen and entrepreneurs. So do you feel like there was any other route for you?
I wanted to be the first ever Pakistani in the NBA.
Really?
That was my ambition in life. I played basketball from the age of 11 like it was my life. Every day, 5 hours a day, I played for my college, I played for the City of Westminster. That was when I was 17, I broke my back. So I had a car accident and I crushed my spine, and I couldn't play anymore after that. So it was a good thing I kind of had business there.
Well, I wanted to touch on that because that is an extremely difficult thing that you went through, and you managed to almost teach yourself, basically, to walk again? So explain that. Was it that you fell asleep at the wheel driving?
I was on a business trip when I was 17, and it was during the European Cup, so there were no hotels available, and we had to drive from Belgium to Paris to find a hotel. I think a mile out of Paris, I fell asleep, and yeah, it was really nasty. I think I broke pretty much every bone in my body, and I crushed my spine and I broke my legs. I think I was in a coma for about 4 days, and yeah, it took me about 11 months. I left hospital in a wheelchair, but by the grace of God, really, nothing else, and having the kind of mind that doesn't really accept defeat too quickly, managed to get out. So yeah, it was mad.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask you a few myths about business that have been said to entrepreneurs for time and time again. So, if you're a jack of all trades, you are a master of none.
You're a master of lots of things. I've never really believed that. I think the problem is, in fact, that's completely the opposite now, because it used to be the kind of the masters, because we lived in an industry where it was all about specialists. You know, you needed accountants, you needed engineers. We're now in an abundant society where you've got left brain thinkers, you've got the accountants and engineers. You need the idea people, and the idea people are the ones who have a massive range of experience. You know, I'm a jack of all trades, and I wouldn't say I'm a master of any. I don't think anyone would ever claim to be a master of anything. But you know, if you can learn a sufficient amount of knowledge about a lot of different things, you can apply them. But to be really honest, would I really want a rocket scientist who was also a surgeon? No. You know, sometimes you need specialist knowledge, but for an entrepreneur, actually having a wider breadth of scale of knowledge is often better.
Okay, and how about you should have a business partner? Most ideas people are told, you're the ideas person, go and get someone who's business savvy and can make the money.
That depends if that's true. See, I come from a business background. I then started to develop ideas. It wasn't that way around. I think there are times, you know, sometimes, you know, for every Steve Jobs there will be a Steve Wozniak required in certain situations. But I would never say to anyone ever go into a partnership, because they are horrible. I've never liked partnerships. I think the good thing about the thing about partnerships is it's like a marriage. You know, 1 in 10 will be perfect, 9 out of 10 will have problems. With partners, if you're lucky to find that one person who you share an absolute vision goal with, and you happen to have shared character, then great. But with most people, you find that partnership often leads to more stress, more aggro, more headache. I've only had a partnership once, and I would never do it again.
Really?
Never done my head in.
I was going to say don't work with friends or family, but you've sort of covered that with the business.
Don't work with friends or family. I mean, take help from friends and family. That's the other thing. People don't realize, you know, I'd rather borrow money from a family member than a bank. Now, people say, oh, I don't borrow money from family, they're headache. Just don't answer the phone.
Okay, so we've spoken a great deal about this technology. Now we're going to test it out on me.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
And what will this tell me about my brain?
Well, it will, first of all, it's not so much, it can tell you about your brain, but at the same time, it allows you to learn, your brain to learn directly. So we'll be able to see what kind of concentration, focus skills you've got. We'll be able to look at how emotionally resilient you are, so how mentally calm you are. We'll be able to look at whether you're a bit of a daydreamer, or whether you're quite attentive, or whether you're naturally someone who's a little bit angry, or somebody who's naturally more calm.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be a real reveal.
So there we go. So actually, this data that you're seeing here, so that's actually your raw brain waves. If you blink, that's your EMG. So anything above a certain hertzage is classed as muscle activity, and the very minute, so kind of 0.5 up to around 80 to 100 hertz is the brain. Anything above that is muscle. So actually we can even use those blinks to help people with disability control keyboards and mice. So when you see the meter at the bottom, it means you're ready to go. And because it's live video, it means we can create all sorts of natural distractions. So you'll see the meter's going to come up now. Hold your focus. Focus. Well done.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you very, very much for spending your whole afternoon with us.
It's been great.
It's been very insightful. And I would like to say to everyone who wants to find out a little bit more about Tre and of course MyndPlay, you can do by looking at the website that's going to come across the screen. And thank you very much for watching, and make sure you stay tuned on YHP and Shine Media for more of our interviews.
Well, I need a dollar